The deprofessionalization of video games was on full display at PAX East. Deprofessionalization. I have a quote that I saw from another video about this topic that I think it's topical. If professionalism is what caused Ubisoft developers to leave and form Sandfall to make Expedition 33, then we definitely need to deprofessionalize the industry. Wouldn't you guys agree? We want less Ubisoft, so I guess we need less professionalism. That's fine. But as you're going to see when we go through this article, though, these guys, like, their argument basically amounts to, yeah, we know the industry is finally healing and getting better and making better games and satisfying customers better. But what about my job security? What about all the bloat? It's not fair that these developers are leaving and forming 30-man studios and outperforming giant 20,000 employee corpos. Won't someone please think of the bloat? All right, PAX East felt like a warning. Explosively successful games by solo devs and small teams are great, but could lead to a dearth of vital specialists. I don't think so. How vital are they really? If they only make slop nobody wants, like, look, even if they were the most skilled people on the planet at a specific skill, if all they ever do is make garbage nobody wants, how vital are they really? If all the good stuff that players actually want is not being made by them, how vital are they really? At DICE and GDC this year, I heard talk of a trend in game development that sent a chill down my spine. Yeah, so this guy is part of the bloat. So yeah, of course he should be scared. Deprofessionalization. As A16Z marketing partner Ryan K. Rigney defines it, deprofessionalization is a phenomenon driven by the overperformance of older titles, particularly free-to-play live service games, large studios struggling to drive sales, and the ousted success of some solo developers, or outside success of some solo developers and small teams. So, non-corporate slop is successful, and corporate slop is failing. And they're saying this is a bad thing. Yeah. Of course, the industry bloat would say this is a bad thing. It's good for everybody else. But won't someone think of the bloat? Now, these three forces he argues will combine to drive career professionals from traditional professionalized side of the games industry. And look, if you fancy yourself a professional, if you do this 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, if not more, if you are a true professional, if this is your day job and you are being outperformed by hobbyists that do this like maybe 2 hours a night after their day job just for fun, then maybe you're not as good or useful as you think you are. Maybe it's no big loss if you leave the industry. Why even stay when, if I was a professional, dude, I would be embarrassed if the hobbyists were doing a better job than me. And some of these people decide to go indie. He continues, others will leave gaming altogether. In between, there's a vast spectrum of irregular working arrangements available. Well, where were you when focus groups and committees and everything else responsible for slop was doing exactly this, driving the most talented developers to go indie or leave the industry? Like, are you missing the part where all the actual good developers are already long gone? There's nothing but useless bloat left at this point. Who cares if they leave? Is this trend real? It sure felt so at PAX East current year. It's no secret that the Corona-Chan pandemic left many game companies decamping from expo floors, retreating to either all online promotion or in-person community meetups structured around intermittent panels. Gone are the days where a chunk of the development team can get one-on-one FaceTime with players. Shifts in supply and demand have simply moved where marketing takes place. No, you could still get that. It's just not going to be in person anymore. So if the developers just do live streams, the players will show up to talk to them. But it may not always be positive interactions, though, like we saw with Bungie. Yeah, Arc Raiders is greater than Art Raiders. Well played. I still I'll never stop laughing at that. That was genius. But something else lurked under the surface. Some notable studios like Behavior Interactive and Funcom had classic booths on the show floor. Devolver Digital may had maybe the tallest booth on display, but it was only using it to showcase 3 games: Myco Punk, Monster Train 2, and Botsu. The bulk of their remaining space is taken up by small publishers and game studios. Maybe because they're reading the room and they can tell what people actually want. Yeah, Mom's Garage developers rise up. Hey, that's what's happening. And the quote unquote professionals are just getting wrecked, at least in the West. Now, wandering through these booths, I found a mix of truly excellent and inspiring games, but also found myself bubbling with frustration. Few of the developers on display were working on teams larger than 3 people. Yeah, as a member of the Bloat, like this guy is, he's scared. He's like, what? But if everyone just splits off into competent teams of like 3 people, is there any space in this industry for parasites like me? And the answer is no. No, there isn't. So these guys are right to be scared. They talked about publishers wanting ever more expensive offerings as part of their pitch deck. Short-term contractors seem to be the best way to plug gaps. Why did it feel like so few proper businesses were fighting to get their games in front of players at PAX? Because it's pointless. Like, why would they care? Now, you see a lot of indies there because when you're an unknown indie, like getting any eyes on your project by any means necessary is priority, which includes going to outdated things like these conventions. But the quote unquote proper businesses, they understand that these conventions are useless in current year. All they need to do is put up that same information on a tweet, and it's going to get way more interaction. Speaking with Rigney and other developers, I sense that deprofessionalization isn't just a catchy phrase to describe the demand-side economics in the game industry hiring. It's a frustrating reality that many that may undervalue games from big and small teams alike. Undervalue, yeah. So is this someone that thinks it's perfectly acceptable to charge $80 for a live service game with free-to-play monetization in it? Is that how you value it? Well, guess what? It's actually, contrary to what you may have been told, the customer is the one that determines the value. Now, you as the producer, you can slap whatever price tag you want on it, but it's the customer that determines whether it's actually worth that much. And they do that by deciding to buy it or not. So if Boomerlands 4 comes out and it's $80 and the customers don't buy it, that's them basically letting you know this isn't worth $80. The customers set the value, all right? All right, deprofessionalization is built on the backs of devaluing labor. Oh God, we're doing this again. So this is probably the type of guy that thinks that there's value in censors, because censors actually do labor and put work into censoring. Even if what they do devalues the product they're working on, we have to just accept that we need to pay them because their work, because they did work and therefore they must have added value. No, they didn't. Yeah, economics 101. Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, our economics teacher actually showed us this awesome video about a guy learning these lessons. So this guy, he had a few hobbies. Like he did various crafts as hobbies. So he built a table. It was a nice table, but he wanted to sell it for like $1,000. And like the people that walked by were like, I'm not paying $1,000 for that. You realize I could just go to Walmart and get an equivalent one for like 30, right? Like, well, how do you get off on charging $1,000 for this table? And then he was like, oh, yeah, well, if you count the material cost and the time I spent on it, and he basically did the breakdown of his expenses. So in order for it to be worth my while, I need to get paid at least $1,000. And no one bought his table. Big surprise. But then he also made some masks that were really popular, apparently. And he had people asking, hey, how much for one of these masks? Is it, oh, yeah, I just shit those together in like 5 minutes. So, yeah, just $5 and we'll call it good. And they were selling out. Like, he actually raised the prices because he figured out he could charge more for that. And that right there is the difference between giving people what they want and trying to force them into something they don't want. The game industry right now is trying to force their customers to buy shit they don't want. And it's not working, thankfully. If you're not making things that customers want, then is it really any loss if you are driven out of the industry? If you weren't doing anything anyone wanted anyway? No, I'd argue no. It's no loss at all. Nothing of value was lost. All right, Rigney offered some extra nuance on his deprofessionalization theory in an email exchange we had before PAX. He predicted that marketing roles at studios would be the first on the chopping block, followed by roles that seem replaceable to management, even if they're not. I beg to differ. The fact that we have small teams outperforming the big corporations without any of these positions, I think they're very. I would say it's not that they're replaceable. It's that they're trashable. You could just get rid of them completely. Why not just do that? Why not? Don't replace them. Just drop them outright. You don't need them. Like DEI is one of those. You do not need a DEI department at your company. You can completely disband that department and fire everyone in it, and there will be no negative effects. You're just going to save money. There's a lot of these positions in corpos that are detrimental. Yeah, the corpo would be better off without them. Right, the winners will be the creative renegades. I'm talking about people making work that would never have been greenlit at one of the bigger publishers in the first place. Yeah, and as customers, that's what we want. Some of these creators will start their own studio or dabble in side projects. This is the only creative industry on the planet where one person can make $100 million making something by themselves. And how is that a bad thing? This is excellent. We want this. We want more of this. That held up my survey of game boothing at PAX. The developers of Mycopunk and Cat Secretary had some of the larger teams on the floor of about 5 to 6 people. The indie publisher Playism was showing off a number of excellent-looking games like Mind Diver and Break Arts 3. Executive producer Shinji Mizutani told me the average team size at the company is, looking back, is around 1 to 3 developers, though he said it's not a hard and fast rule. There's some people are starting to learn. That's nice. In my favorite game I saw, We Harvest Shadows, being developed by the First Tree, a solo developer, David Welle. Welle explained while he's hiring a contract coder to help with the dense system design fueling the farming part of his horror farming simulator. The story was the same everywhere I went. Solo devs, 2-person teams, and publishers fishing for low-budget indie hits were the talk of the show. Oh man, these poor indies. If they sell out to one of these publishers, oh man, they're going to learn some really hard lessons. So I wanted to be clear. No one I spoke with at PAX East should feel obligated to give anyone a job. There's smaller teams making the most of limited resources, and there's an acceleration in game development technology that's made it possible. What feels wrong is how few people seem to benefit from this status quo. Yeah. This is exactly what I said at the beginning, isn't it? Yeah. So the industry is finally getting healthier. The games are getting better. The customers are happier. The people who matter are making more money. When these small teams release games that sell millions, they become multimillionaires. Oh, but what about the Bloat? What about all the middle managers? What about the executives? What about the shareholders? Won't someone think of the rich people that don't do anything productive in life? They just park their money in things that generate more money. Oh, what about them? What about them? Fuck them. How is this wrong? This is just the productive people ditching the fucking parasites. This has been the case in almost every job I've ever had. In general, only like maybe 5% of the team was making money and doing real work. Everyone else was just there to get in the way. This is what happens when people realize that and they get rid of the parasites that were just getting in the way. Everyone who matters, everyone who was actually doing the important work, they're benefiting from it. That's how it should be. To go back to Rigney for a moment, his key example of a post-deprofessionalization game developer is a veteran developer, Aaron Rutledge, a former lead designer on League of Legends, Call of Duty Blops 4, and Apex Legends. After leaving Respawn in current year -1, he founded a consultancy firm, Area Denial, acting as a gun for hire for studios. Rutledge deserves his success, and a life of a traveling creative called on by other studios sounds romantic. But as a foundation for game development, it's a framework that celebrates the few over the many. Yes, it's called efficiency. If most of the many are not needed, how is this a bad thing? This literally is, oh yeah, I know everything is better, like everyone who matters is better off. But what about my job security? I went to college for this. I'm owed a job where I just sit there all day leeching off of other people's work. That's the energy I get from this article. It narrows which roles are considered essential for making great games, often designers or programmers, and treats others as somehow less essential. Dude, reality plays this out. If you literally have teams of nothing but designers and programmers outperforming teams of these other allegedly just as essential people, that kind of proves which ones are actually essential and which ones aren't. You can't fight against reality for very long. You could see someone like Willa hiring someone like Rutledge or like Rutledge to bring some of that AAA experience to a small game. Oh God, like I don't know. Like we've seen so many studios by former AAA developers that are just so embarrassingly bad. I don't. At this point, I would say AAA experience is more of a detriment than a positive. Like, oh, you were with the legacy AAA industry? Oh, brother, ew. Brother, ew. Yeah, I don't want you anywhere near my game. Maybe that feels like the polar ends of who can benefit in the deprofessionalized world. Developers with the stability to swing big for big shot ideas and programmers or designers with deep career experience that can be called in like a group of noble mercenaries. The people in between will be left out. Yeah, that's called the bloat. Yes. The people with the skills, like the 5% of the team that was doing all the real work and making all the money, like this is what happens when the productive people finally wake up and they ask themselves, like, why are we dragging these parasites around with us? If we just cut them off, not only could we work more efficiently and get more done and do better work, but we'll be paid more money. So the world that this guy is advocating for, like he wants you to work 80 hours a week for minimum wage. So all these other people could skim off the top. So all this bloat, all these parasites can leech off of your work. That's what this guy wants. It's so obvious this guy is part of the bloat. Who gets left behind in what mainly filled with small teams? Those that can't compete and perform. It's as simple as that. My PAX trip validated my fear that 3 professionals are especially vulnerable to this deprofessionalized world. Artists, writers, and those working in game audio or music. No, this is bullshit. This is absolute bullshit right there. Especially with game engines being as good as they are now, you realize you could make a decent game with no programming experience just by using the tools you have available. So artists and writers, I mean, look, a writer with no art or coding experience can use AI to generate the art and then use any given game engine to make a game out of it. Like, no, 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 no. This guy, just the way he's thinking about it, you can tell this guy is hopeless bloat. Any person in any profession can use the tools available to them to pretty much make a solo game and have it be passable. The only people who are going to be left behind are the people that can't do shit for themselves. Like the mindless drones, like the people that have to be told before they get off their ass or do anything. Those are the people that are going to be left behind. Because if you're working on a tiny team, there is no place for people like that. And you could be a developer, a designer. You could be in one of these allegedly important positions. If you can't do shit for yourself, you're going to be useless. These roles seem vulnerable because on these small teams, they were the roles developers mentioned doing in some kind of shared or joint fashion. You realize the same goes for programming and design, right? So all three risk compartmentalization as asset creators, their work treated as products you can purchase off a store shelf. Do you realize that that's exactly how these big professional businesses treat them now? Why do you think they lay off the team after a game releases and then they immediately hire another team for their next project? They already view you as compartmentalized. They already just view you as asset creators. See, at least these small indie teams are more honest about it. At least these indie teams, they put out honest listings. Hey, I'm looking to hire an artist to do some concept work for me. And right off the bat, you might be hired for other projects if the guy likes your work, but that contract is for that concept art and that's it. Every artist in games knows how hard it is to make a living doing what you love. If you fell for that do what you love and the money will follow line, you have it coming. I'm sorry. In-house artist positions have faded away as companies look overseas to produce as many assets as humanly possible at the lowest living wage. You do realize this applies to developers as well, right? You think that us code monkeys haven't been dealing with outsourcing? Man, these people are just special. This writer is so clueless. Like, he has no idea about anything he's talking about. Like, you could tell that this entire article is just an emotional fear response because he knows he is among the bloat that there will be no place for as the industry changes. So he's just living in fear himself and trying to fear monger. Enthusiasm for ad-generated assets that look like dog shit. I love how even this bitterness is still there. Yes, a lot of AI art looks like dog shit. But if actual good artists put some effort into cleaning it up, it could look way better than what most people can put out. Yeah, I still remember what triggered all of this. Remember, it was when an AI won an art contest. Until they knew it was AI, all of these fart-sniffing POSs, they were praising it. They were praising how awesome that artwork was. And then the creators admitted they used AI to generate it. And now suddenly it's the worst thing ever. That's the level of intelligence we're dealing with. Nudging this trend along in the gun for hire mindset. Working artists aren't worth anything to game development because they're producing goods to be used, not participants in the process. Art directors are slightly more stable position, but only by virtue of knowing what looks good and telling someone else what they want to do. So, speaking as somebody who is hiring artists to do work, notice that they're still there. Kind of weird, right? And they got input into the projects too. I wonder why that is. Why does reality not match the fear-mongering? Oh, wait, I know. It's because the artists I work with aren't useless fucking bloat. See, when you find good people, you will go out of your way to keep them. Even if there's a slow period, I will still pay them just to keep them on. Like, no. I'd rather not risk you going anywhere else. So, yeah, just take it easy for a week or two until I got something else for you. I'll still pay you. When you find actual good people, you will do what you need to do to not lose them. This guy is useless bloat. And most people are useless bloat in this industry, unfortunately. No one's going to put effort in to keep them around. As someone who recently shipped his second game as a writer, the cuts to game narrative teams hit close to home. You want to know why game narrative teams are getting cut? Because they're releasing dog shit content. It's not hard. If you keep pushing this woke dog shit that nobody actually wants, yeah, you're going to get cut. I'd be willing to bet money that Nikkei's narrative team over at Shift Up isn't getting cut because they're producing good work. This ain't rocket surgery here. The GDC current year state of the industry survey report that 11% of developers laid off in the last year. 19% of them worked in the game narrative, the highest of any responding demographic. Well, because that's probably the biggest offender for why games suck nowadays. I mean, the art is secondary to that, but the artists are just making what the writers told them to make. So yeah, I think the industry recognizes who the problems are and they're fixing them. Two diverging trends are hurting this field: the growth of successful games that don't feature much narrative, either focusing on deep game mechanics or story-light multiplayer, and the spread of story-driven games authored by a creative director and maybe one or two collaborators create conditions that lower the number of available jobs. So doesn't that prove that you're not necessary? How can you justify your existence as a writer when small teams of just a creative director and two collaborators can write a better story than if they hired you? In what world does this make sense? How can you say that's a bad thing? Obviously, you're not good at your job. If they get rid of you and the result is a better story that players like more, is there any other conclusion we can draw from this than you just suck? Maybe you should look into another profession. Game writers have long described frustration with how they're treated in the industry, often brought in later in the process and sometimes treated as if they lie in opposition to the rest of the development team. Well, if they're the ones that are pushing wokeness while the rest of the team is resisting, yeah. Some studios leaned on the job title narrative designer for professionals who write and implement narrative events, but that still speaks to a mistrust of the profession, and producing words isn't enough to bring value to a team. If you're good at it. Once again, if the creative director and two collaborators can produce better words than a alleged professional like you, you're not exactly making a strong case to hire you, man. So I'd go back to giving us one creator's vision. Now that, I think, hits the nail on the head. Well, part of the reason these games are so bad now is they're just so corporate and done by committee. All of the best games, at least when it comes to stories, come from the mind of one creative and maybe a few people supporting them. But yeah, you can't do this committee shit when it comes to creative decisions. You got to have a concrete creative vision. But bloat like you wouldn't understand that, would they? Finally, game audio and music professionals both produce work that can be bundled into licensable libraries with implementation left to designers on a team. Sometimes this work is essential. The number of sounds a game needs can't be produced by an individual human. The composers don't always want to be tied to one studio. Working with multiple teams frees them to explore creative projects and keep working when they aren't, and is now or unnecessarily needed on a day-to-day game development environment. But again, treating them this way puts them on the rim of a game development wheel, implying the labor could be deprioritized by true talent that deserves to reap the benefits of game design. I think that the true talent is the one that's in this environment. They're the ones that benefit. Yeah. And look, I sing the praises of audio design in games all the time. Like Deep Rock Galactic, for example, has some of the best audio design out of any game I ever played. And I notice, believe me, I notice. So just like with visual artists, if you find yourself a top tier audio artist, you do everything in your power to keep those people around. If no one is fighting to keep you around, maybe you just not that good. Look, it would be one thing if clueless middle managers were making decisions to cut people, because like they always make the wrong decisions, right? But when it's the creatives themselves that want nothing to do with you, you should take the hint. When the best people in the company decide to go off on their own to make their own game and they don't invite you, take the hint. Decentralized creative community needs to benefit creatives. Oh, yeah. And see, this is another thing bottom feeders always do. They have to turn everything into a community. So they need it to be a community because otherwise the talented individuals will split themselves off from them and they'll become successful without them. In order for these parasites to keep attaching themselves to their superiors, they need to trick their superiors into believing that that there's some value in the community. Meanwhile, I guarantee you, every one of these people who actually has talent, they all view the community as standing in their way. They tolerate it if there's something the community offers them, but the second they can, they leave. Maybe there's a reason for that. Yeah, community is a glorified group. Yeah, so community in this context is group projects in high school. You got five kid teams working on a project. One kid does all the work. Everyone else just goofs off. Yeah, obviously the four that are goofing off, they're the ones that are pushing for more community. Whereas the one that's doing all the work wants to split. And it's looking like, the free market's decided. The ones who have actual value, they will succeed. And the bloat like this will be left behind and nothing of value will be lost. Rigney explained to me that the game industry has one ace up its sleeve that other creative fields don't. Its indie market is a commercially viable market. People are paying for these games, he explained. It's not happening for indie filmmakers. Because with a few exceptions, like Clerks, for example, in general, indie films aren't anywhere near as good as, big budget films. It's relatively easy to make an indie game that at least has the graphical fidelity of a big budget game. Relatively, of course. This isn't happening for books. That's bullshit. It is happening with books. Like, there's a reason that the book market in general is kind of flopping right now because books they're making the same mistake that games are. The big publishers are publishing dog shit. So it looks like the market itself is contracting because the big publishers are losing customers hand over fist. But book readers are not just going to stop reading books. They either read older books or they read more obscure indie books. Yeah, none of these idiots know what they're talking about, man. This is obviously an article by game journalists for game journalists. And what's happening for indie games is small studios won't replace the jobs lost at major publishers, but they will create an opportunity for the most creative and most determined people. Okay, now that's true. And that is why the bloat is being left behind, because the bloat are not the most creative or most determined people. But don't rush off to start your indie dreams. It's still just as true as it was for years that most indie games do not succeed. Absolutely true. This is why my advice is, if you want to make a game, get a job in a different field that doesn't eat up too much of your time and stress, and then make the game on your own time as a hobby. And then once the game is finished, you can release it. You can see how it does. If it's a complete flop, oh, well, I mean, you did it for fun as a hobby anyway. You still have your day job. I guess it's time to try again or maybe do something different. If it does succeed, okay, once you've made your fortune, okay, then you could quit your day job and focus on more game dev. That's my advice anyway. I would say you do it that way. And plus, if you maintain the day job, you can get money to hire people to do the things you can't do. That does, and those that don't succeed can still be financial fodder for the shovel merchants of the world. Your technology companies, your payment processors, your game platforms, your investors, etc. Plenty of companies are standing ready to profit on the devs gunning to be the next Schedule 1. So did the Schedule 1 guy go with a publisher, or did he self-publish his game? I'm going to look at that real quick. I'm going to see who the publisher is for Schedule 1. TVGS. No, the developer self-published that game from the looks of it. So, indie developers, take note. This guy didn't need a big publisher. Now, it's true, if you go with a big publisher, they might be able to get you a lot more sales because they have a lot bigger network. But in return for that, they own the game, basically. Like, if you go with a publisher, and again, the deals could differ, but in general, the publisher owns the game. You're basically work for hire now on your own game. You don't have any creative control anymore either. The publisher gets all the say. If you go with a publisher, you've destroyed all reason you had for even doing this independently in the first place. You may as well just sign up to work at Ubisoft at this point. It was a publisher do beyond marketing. They often fund you as well. Yeah, the publisher provides you with the money to keep working. That's why I said keep your day job and do it on your own time so you don't have to worry about that. The more independent you can stay, the better. All right, is there a way deprofessionalization could benefit the developers left behind? Yeah, if they get good. But you don't want to hear that, do you? Because you're a fake gamer. Right, Rigney raised one fair point. Part of the reason some indies are running circles around large companies is that those companies can mismanage creative so badly they go for years without shipping a game. It's not even just that, but when they do ship the game, it's dog shit. How many hundreds of millions of dollars and almost a decade worth of time was spent on Concord? If someone smart could crack that problem, improve management at large organizations, and make sure the games make it out the door, that could be a way to balance out the trend. I've been telling you this for years. Look, I'll tell you the solution now because I know you idiots won't listen anyway. Make sure the people that have creative control of the project are actual creatives themselves and fans of what they're working on. That's literally it. Stop taking creative control away from the most qualified people and giving it to marketing, giving it to a middle manager, giving it to a bean counter, giving it to an MBA, bruh, giving it to committees and focus groups. That's your fucking problem, but you're not going to listen because you're idiots. Doesn't matter how many times I've been saying it for years. I'll continue saying it for years. And you fucking idiots are going to keep ignoring me, even though you see all around you examples of what I said proven right. Right now, none of the solutions are well equipped to solve all the problems. See, and that's another problem these big corporations have. So you come to them with a solution that is good enough, and then the managers kick it back. But it's not a perfect solution. And then when then you saw that with Expedition 33. The good developers that were working at Ubisoft got sick of working in that environment, so they just gave up. They left, they made their own, and they showed their old employer how it's done. Do you think Ubisoft is going to change now? Do you think they're going to implement what they've learned? Oh, of course not. If anything, they're gonna start implementing even worse NDAs and non-competes. We need to make sure that our best talent can never leave us and show us up again. Now, I work in venture capital, which isn't great for funding individual games, but can work well for funding teams that are pursuing large scale growth via some new distribution and technological edge. Yeah, and that's why this guy doesn't know anything. He works in venture capital. Venture capital is the primary source of enshittification. Now it's making sense why these people are so clueless. They only look at it from the lens of how can I milk the most money from this thing. Indeed, PAX East showed that we need creative solutions. One shouldn't need to be a social media wunderkind, a AAA veteran with years of hard-earned experience, or a jack of all trades to have a career in the game development. Well, it's competition. It's a free market, man. It's a meritocracy. You're not owed a career in game development. If you're worth a shit, you'll succeed. If you're not, you won't. It's that simple. But the problem is, like, a lot of these people, like, they're just not willing to accept that maybe the problem is them. Maybe they're not as good as they think they are. Maybe they suck. Yeah, I mean, there are instances of legitimately talented people just getting screwed by RNG, but those are exceedingly rare. Most of the indie games that failed on their own merits or lack thereof. Yeah, that path does bring us some wildly inventive games, but leaves us a community of developers hustling on gig work to keep their dream alive. And what's the problem? So the people that with the actual talent succeed, those without it don't. What's the problem? Unless you're part of the untalented bloat, I don't see a problem with this. But I'm just beating the dead horse at this point. It's obvious that these people are untalented bloat, which is why they have a problem. We don't need to take them seriously, though. The free market's going to filter them out in no time. They can write all the articles they want. They could bitch all they want. It's not going to change anything. They're going to be gate kept from the industry and filtered out soon enough. We just got to outlast them.